Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Religion of Human Nature podcast. I have a hilarious guest on today, former star of SNL, or otherwise known as Saturday Night Live, many movies and TV shows that we've all seen. I grew up watching him, and I'm so excited to have Jon Lovitz here on this podcast. Jon, how you doing?
Great. How are you? Thank you for having me on, by the way.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm fine, as good as you can be in COVID. Thank God, healthy, and just sort of rolling with the punches.
By the way, I see those little bobblehead dolls. You're a baseball fan?
A huge baseball fan. That's Sandy Koufax, and then my wife made one of me.
Oh, Sandy Koufax. Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles, and so through Billy Crystal, I met
Who's Billy Crystal? No,
some
I'm kidding.
comedian. And Joe, is it Joe? Not Joe. Is it Joe Torres? Who's the manager of the Yankees?
Yeah, Joe Torre. What? First the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I ran into him. So I became friendly with Joe. And anyway, he said he was having a fundraiser for this thing called Margaret's Room, which was the name of his mother, who was physically abused by his father. And he talks about it in YouTube, and years later he's talking about it, and he started crying. So he started it in schools for kids, a safe place for kids to school. So he had did an interview with Sandy Koufax at this Nokia Center in Los Angeles. It was like 7,000 people, and so it was nobody had interviewed Sandy Koufax in years, So they had behind the stage. They had a dinner for about 100 people, and I got to go, and I got to meet Sandy Koufax, and it was great. And he came up to me and he goes, "Oh, I loved Rat Race, the Barbie Museum," and I was like, I almost started crying because I was a kid in Little League, and Sandy Koufax was pitching, and you're just like, and then you go, Sandy Koufax knows who I am. Blew my mind, but he was so nice. And then he was leaving. Afterward, we're backstage, and I said, they go, "Don't ask him for pictures." And he was at every table taking pictures. They go, "He'll come to your table and take a picture." But I knew the photographer from the Dodgers, so I said, "Listen, I can't ask him. Can you ask him?" And so he goes, "All right." So he goes, "Hey, Jon Lovitz wants a picture with you." And he goes, and he was like, "Can I get a picture with him?" And he was like, "No, I have to." And then he saw it was me. He goes, "Oh." And he ran back. And I was like, I was just thrilled. He couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah, he's one of the only Jewish athletes I have not interviewed. Obviously, the myth and aura around him, and in 1965, the synagogue I'm sitting in right now, they were playing the Twins when he took off for Yom Kippur, and it's believed there's a whole folklore, whether it's true or not. I've written an article about it, whether he was in synagogue that day. And it was believed if he was in synagogue, he was at this synagogue. That the rabbi claimed that he was here. I don't have any actual footage of that, but that's why I call it the Koufax Midrash, which means, folklore. But I want to talk about some of your influences, and this episode is going to be entitled Influences, because you've had a lot of influence in your comedy career, starting with Woody Allen, who you've spoken about, that you saw his work and that sort of ignited a spark in you. So tell me a little bit about why Woody Allen's films.
Well, growing up in the Valley, my best friend was David Kudrow, who is Lisa Kudrow and Friends, her brother. So he became my best friend. We grew up in Tarzana, and I was at his house all the time. And Lisa, I've known since she's 5, and she's like my little sister. And so David and I really became best friends. And David's really, really funny. And then we would do jokes about being Jewish, or rabbis going hello, and stuff, and so we went and saw. We were 13, and we went and saw Woody Allen's first movie, Take the Money and Run. And I didn't know who he was, but we went and saw the movie, and we flipped out. Thought he was the funniest guy ever. We go, this is the guy. This is like our humor. It was so like our sense of humor, and so. Anyway, and I wanted to be a baseball player. When you're a kid, you go, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'm like, "I want to be a baseball player and a movie star," And the way I think, though, is for me, I'm always like, well, why not me? Why can some guy from Ohio go, "I want to be an actor," and do it, but I can't because I'm from here? It never made sense. I go, that's what I want to do. And I wasn't good enough at baseball, but I loved it. I was passionate about it. But anyway, I stopped playing when I was 15 because I went to a private high school. I was lucky, but I had like 5 hours of homework a night, and I'd have 3 hours of practice, and I'd be at 7 o'clock at my desk, just falling asleep, and I just couldn't do it. I should have stuck it out, but I didn't. But anyway, I was 16, and I saw the movie Lenny, starring Dustin Hoffman, about the comedian Lenny Bruce. Mm-hmm. And I'd never heard of Lenny Bruce. So I went when they had the record store, and I wanted to hear the real Lenny Bruce. So I bought some of his albums, and they had a comedy record section, and it was like, this big. It was like not very big. And then I saw it said Woody Allen, the nightclub years. And I was like, what's this? Well, from 64 to 68, Woody Allen had been a stand-up comedian. I didn't know he was a stand-up. So I bought that. And then I was playing it for David. I go, you got to hear this Woody Allen record. It's so funny. And then when I went to college at UC Irvine, I was a drama major. And in the dorm, I was in the fine arts dorm called Prado. And it's it was like a 2-story building. And there was like, the bottom floor was guys and the top floor was women. And it was like 30 rooms each or something. Or maybe, I don't know how many, but it was about, it was about 60 of us living in this dorm, or maybe 45. No, probably 45. Anyway, the point was we had a talent night. So I said, I'm going to do Woody Allen and Lenny Bruce's routines. So I would write out their routines on an index card and listen to Woody Allen, and I would make little arrows when his voice would go up or down or flat, and when he would hit certain consonants. Like he does a routine about a moose. He goes, I was hunting in upstate New York, but he hit the K in New York, and then he goes, K's are funny, and I was in, no, he goes, I shot a moose. He goes, I shot a moose. I was hunting in upstate New York. He would like talk, and I shot a moose. So anyway, and actually that whole moose routine is about Judaism, believe it or not. It ends up being about that. And then he ends up going to a costume party, and he goes, I'll bring the moose. I'll ditch him at the party. It wouldn't be my responsibility. He shoots it and it ties to his car. And he goes, I didn't kill it. The bullet merely creased the moose's scalp, knocking him unconscious. And he wakes up in the Holland Tunnel, and he goes, he's signaling for a turn, and he brings this moose to a costume party. And then he says, and he goes, anyway, he goes, the moose mingled, did very well. They give out prizes for the best costume of the night. Something like, the Berkowitzes. First prize goes to the Berkowitzes, a married couple dressed in a moose suit. The moose comes in second. The moose is furious. He and the Berkowitzes lock antlers. They knock each other unconscious. Now I figure, here's my chance. I grab the moose, strap him to the fender of my car, and shoot back to the woods. No, he goes, but I've got the Berkowitzes. And there's a law in New York State against driving with a Jewish couple on your fender Tuesdays, Thursdays, and especially Saturdays. The following morning, Mr. Berkowitz wakes up in the woods in a moose suit. No, the following morning, the Berkowitzes wake up in the woods in a moose suit. And Mr. Berkowitz is shot, stuffed, and mounted at the New York Athletic Club. And the joke is on them because it's restricted, right? So that's, against Jews. So that's his routine. And that just influenced the hell out of me. And I would do it in my dorm. And, I didn't know what I was doing. So 79, so I had my, or 78, I had my John Travolta, white suit from Saturday Night Fever. And I had a cigar like George Burns, and I was doing these routines, and they got him. They loved him, and it was just thrilling. Did
you ever get to meet Woody Allen, Lenny Bruce, Jack Benny?
Well, Lenny Bruce had already died in the 60s. Yeah. But I met, when I was on Saturday Night Live, anyway, Penny Marshall, God bless her, brought me to this restaurant, Columbus, and introduced a guy, Paul Herman, who was an actor. And he introduced me to everybody. One of Paul's friends was Brian Hamill, who was Woody Allen's still photographer, and I became friends with Brian. He brought me to Michael's pub where Woody Allen played. I always said, I want to meet him. He goes, I'll bring you someday. And he brought me to this thing, and he introduced me to Woody Allen. Oh, you talk about influence, right? So he introduced me to Woody Allen, and I go, nice to meet you. And then Brian goes, John always wanted to be a comedian because of you. And I was really embarrassed. And Woody Allen said, oh, I finally influenced somebody. Fits into your pocket. And
Take the Money and Run was actually one of the first films my father showed me, comedy films. Those and all the Peter Sellers Pink Panthers. He really wanted me.
Yeah, those were the top guys back then. Yeah. And of course, Peter Sellers, the way he would do different characters. So every like you playing SNL, and you think of Peter Sellers because you want to do different characters, and he was just brilliant. And but those two in comedy influenced me. And then in acting, I had a teacher, William Needles, who was a big actor in Canada, and he would come to Irvine, UC Irvine, and teach every year. And he was like, this guy, Mr. Chips. He was like a father figure. All the kids loved him. I did. And he was great to me, really great to me. I know he adored me forever, his whole life. And he taught me Shakespeare, and I liked Laurence Olivier and John Barrymore and the actors that were bigger than life. So that's kind of what I got Master Thespian from. I was like, very well, and I could just do it. I don't know how, but I could. And, but those were the influences on me when I was younger,
Well, let's talk about a famous character that's well known from your SNL days, Hanukkah Harry. So how do you pick up a character, and where do you find sort of influence to create a character that's so memorable or so funny like that?
Yeah. So, well, I think Al Franken and Mike Myers wrote it, but I just remember Mike was in the sketch. They said they wrote it, but Al was, clearly came up with it. And because anyway, so Al goes, I have this idea, instead of Santa Claus, there's like a Hanukkah Harry. What would that be like? So Al wrote all that, and on Moshe and all this and this. So I have the script, so he wrote it. So now I got to figure out a way to play it. So when I was 15, I was at David Kudrow's house and Lisa's, and their father, Dr. Kudrow, he was a doctor. And I was 15, and he had a patient of his at his house, an actor named Ned Glass. And so I based it on Ned Glass. And what happened was, I met him, and he said, Dr. Kudrow goes, Ned, John wants to be an actor. This is my friend's son, John. He wants to be an actor. And he goes, you want to be an actor? What would you do if you hurt your toe? I said, I don't know. I'd say, ouch. I bent down and touched my foot. I go, ouch. He goes, would you say ouch if you were Hercules? You know what you have to know to be an actor? You have to know everything. Do you think you could know everything? And then he goes, there's only two actors who were never typecast, me and Paul Muni. Well, Paul Muni was, who happened to be in the Yiddish theater, a Jewish actor. He's one of the greatest character actors in the history of film. Like, how great an actor was Paul Muni? Like, he won Oscars, Louis Pasteur. If you saw him in the movie, he's playing Louis Pasteur, and then he played the gangster Scarface, the same guy. You'd be like, who is this? This guy's like so great. This is how great an actor. The point is, Ned Glass, God bless him, he's great, but he was the same in everything. You look in Julius Caesar, and he's in the middle of Julius Caesar in the marketplace going, some apples, my lord. He's the same. Paul Muni was such a great actor. One of my best friends, Amico Brando's dad's Marlon Brando. And I got to know Marlon, and I said, was there ever an actor that everyone looked up to you, but was there ever an actor that you saw, that you watched, and you went, oh my God, this guy's amazing? And he said, yes, Paul Muni.
Yeah.
I did a play with him, and he had this big speech because the hair would stand up in the back of my neck. That's how great this guy was. So that's Marlon Brando, who completely changed the art form, saying Paul Muni, So anyway, I just thought it was funny that Ned's comparing himself to Paul Muni. But anyway, so I said, I'm going to do Hanukkah Harry as Ned Glass and talk like this. And no, I didn't tell anybody. I just, And I'm doing it. And Robert Smigel was a writer in his first year in the show, wrote Triumph, The Insult Dog, wrote lots of sketches, you know. And Robert goes, John, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. He goes, are you doing Ned Glass? And I went, yes. How did you know? It's not like you saw him, you go him, but not everyone knew, hardly anyone knew his name, you know, except for other actors, you know. He goes, I go, yes. He goes, you are? I go, yes. And I told him the story. I go, oh my God, you know Ned Glass? He goes, yes. I go, yes, it's Ned Glass.
So while you're on an ensemble cast like Saturday Night Live, I imagine you also get some influences from within the cast because you're all so talented, especially, I mean, even the names you just mentioned are just the tip of the iceberg, but you worked with Dana Carvey and Mike Myers, people who were just alongside you also.
Well, Dana and Mike, I was on the show before them, you see. They looked up to, I remember Dana got the show. I didn't influence them at all, but Dana got the show after me. He was really nice. And he came into my office. He goes, let's write something together. And I just looked at him going, I don't even know what you do. And he goes, what do you do? He goes, I'm going to hitch my wagon to a winner. And he's one of my best friends still. We're very close. And we joke about it. And I go, yeah, and you did. And I slingshot you ahead. You're welcome. But the only one in the cast that influenced me was, and by the way, I admire all those guys. And I just thought, God, they're so great. I can't do what they do. But Phil Hartman, I met in the Groundlings, and he was the king of the Groundlings. And he was 11 years old, or 9 years older than me. And he was like I idolized him. He was like my big brother. So he had an influence on me. And
the greatest.
I liked old movies, and so did he. And he did a character in the Groundlings, Chick Hazard, which was a like Humphrey Bogart, Philip Marlowe, you know, gangster type, spoof satire of that kind of character. And and we both loved old movies. So we wrote a sketch together. We would always be doing it, like goofing around. Guys, why for, you know, I'd say something, he goes, why for 2 cents? I'd go, yeah, what would you do for a nickel? Just cross that line. You better watch it. You know, we would do it all the time. So I said, Phil, let's write a sketch. We're always doing it. And I didn't realize we did it when he auditioned, and they said, John, go up and join Phil. You can see it. So that's the sketch we wrote called One More Mission. If you go on YouTube, and it was doing that quick talking style that they would do in movies in the 40s. And it was one of our favorite sketches, his favorite sketch by far, he said. He goes, and, but I loved it. You see how brilliant he is in it. And we really
Phil Hartman
we love that sketch, you know, and he was great when he would just like get really emotional and just explode. And he does it in the sketch because it's just so funny because his face gets beet red and he gets really into it. And he was just brilliant, you know, and he could do anything. I said, Phil, it's like, I'd always say to him, I go, you and Jim Carrey, you're the only two guys I know. You can change your face and look like somebody without makeup. I go, how do you do that? And they both can do it. And it's brilliant. It's like, can you do that? I'm like, no, I can exchange my expression, but I can't look like another person, but they could. That's like beyond, I don't know what that is. It's like magic trick, but they're doing it, you know?
I think the only moment during the whole political process over the last couple months that I got excited about was when they announced that Jim Carrey would be playing Joe Biden on
oh, it's great. Yeah. Jim, I've known Jim since he's 20 and he's brilliant. You know, he's got that whole style that only he can do, you know? So you see guys that influence you go, yeah, but I can't do that. But there are other people that are, I'm sure, physical comedians in that way and can do it, you know? So the way you think, and, you know, like Woody Allen, his humor, it lined up for me. And anyway, Brian Hamill, I go on a tangent. I met Woody Allen. Anyway, 5 years later, I met him again on a set. He goes, come by anytime. And I remember being on one of his sets talking to him. And I said, you know, I always worry that, I go, you influenced me so much that I worry people are going to watch me and go, oh, you're just doing Woody Allen. I go, but I said, I read that was true about him and Bob Hope. And Woody Allen said, no, it was Mort Saul. He goes, and they said, he's really funny if you could just get rid of his Mort Saul mannerisms. So it's like everybody's influenced by somebody, you know?
So let's talk about some of the comedians today And what do you feel now that you feel, you've spoken a bit about your influences and your colleagues, and Phil Hartman, who anyone who knows anything about comedy knows that he was one of the giants of comedy. And I
had to beg Lauren to get him on the show. I had to push and push and push.
Yeah, he was the greatest.
Lauren's like, well, if he hasn't made it in the ground, how long has he been in the groundlings? I said 11 years. He goes, well, John, if he hasn't made it by now, there must be a reason. And I went, yeah, I guess, but he's so talented. And it was because he didn't really want it. He liked his life, and he goes, I don't want to be famous. I don't want that. And
yeah,
I'm like, come on.
So who are some of the, what do you feel like your responsibility is when you meet a young comic, maybe at the club who wants to pick your brain, or someone, you see someone maybe using some of your shtick. That's a Jewish word for act, I guess, or
I know.
No, I wasn't telling you. I'm telling listeners.
I know. I'm kidding.
So what role do you feel like you have to? Do you feel you have to play that role, or do you want to play that role?
I don't feel I have to, but I enjoy helping other people, and I taught a friend of mine was a Fraser Smith, a comedian. He goes, who's a good acting teacher? And I go, I don't know anymore. I'm out of that. So then he goes, would you teach a class? And then I had to I said, I've never done it. I go, well, get the people together and I'll do it. So I did that for free for like 7 months, or 8 months I did it. Or if people ask me for advice, I'll tell them, but I'll go on and on and on. Cause I like to try to help people. Just in life in generally, if they ask me for advice, I go, all right, you really want to hear all this? Cause I'll go on and on. But I enjoy it. It's it's helping them, and it makes you feel good that you can help somebody that I can actually help you with this, and I go, look I don't know, obviously everything. Well, who does? But a lot of people think they do, but I know acting. I know how to do comedy. I know acting. It's all I've been doing forever. I've studied everybody. I did it for years, and I still practice. I still do it. So I can tell you about that. That I know about.
Wonderful. Well,
performing, the business side I know, but that's a whole nother thing. But I enjoy it, and if somebody imitates me, it's flattering,
any young comedians that you've seen or that you've been on a roast with that you just sort of love their work?
Oh, a lot of comedians. Yeah. There's, stand-ups the thing about a stand-up comedian is they're on stage by themselves. So, and the one thing I notice about comics, almost all of them, except for Jerry Seinfeld, is the only one that he says anyway, that they all have issues with their father. All of them, including me, everybody. And so so what happens though is when they're on stage, if another comic's on stage getting laughs, they're turning the audience into their father and going like, oh, that's my laughs. And they like him, not me. And it has nothing to do with it. Like zero. Audience just wants someone to be funny, but in their mind, it's that. So they're very competitive, but what was your influences?
Who are some of those comedians?
Well, I can tell you though, someone who influenced me too, I learned from was Robin Williams, and I was at UC Irvine. I was like 20, and this was 9 months before he became famous. He did Mark and Mindy, the series, and they had a thing at Irvine, Solar Energy Day. They called it Sunday, S-U-N, like sun, but the actual about the sun and solar energy. They called it Sunday. So there was a notice on the drama board, they wanted someone to do a sketch. So if you could, so I called, I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I wrote a sketch and so there was me and 3 other friends, and we performed it on the library steps, and there's about 350 people sitting there. And so I did my sketch, and then Rob, I didn't know who he was. No, he wasn't famous. This guy goes, hey, I'm next. Can you introduce me? I go, yeah, what do you want me to say? He goes, just say, here's our next first stand-up comedian from Russia, Nikki Lennon. So I said, okay. So I get up, I go, now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce you. This is the first, making his debut in America, the first stand-up comedian from Russia, Nikki Lennon. And then this guy comes up and just blew everybody away. And he was just brilliant, hysterical. So afterward, I went up to him. I said, "Hey, that was so funny." I go, "By the way, did you see my sketch?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Do you have any advice? Like, what do you think?" He goes, "Yeah, I thought it was funny." But he goes, at first, he goes, you'll imitate other people, but then after a while, you find your own, your own way, and do that." And I'll never forgot it. And I go, "I'll do that." And then I said, "Oh, can I ask you a question?" Because in college, people go, "Why aren't you ever serious?" I go, "People ever come up to you and go, 'Why aren't you ever serious?'" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Yeah, me too." I go, "What is that? What do you say to them?" He goes, "Oh, just say, I just say, 'Why aren't you ever funny?'"
Well, we
And then
all,
years later, I met him at the Comedy Store a couple years later. I graduated. He said he would talk to me after the show, but I got too embarrassed, And then years later, on Saturday Night Live, he hosted SNL, and I got to work with him. And there's a sketch. I'm doing Master Thespian, and Phil's doing it, and Robin. There's a sketch where it's me, Robin, and Phil, where Al Franken wrote it, where Robin's playing Hamlet, and I'm playing Shakespeare, but he's Hamlet, but it's Robin, so he starts improvising Hamlet, and I'm like, "Stop it, you're ruining my play," and I mean, he was great. Oh, by the way, sorry, tangents. Woody Allen, years later, I see Take the Money and Run, and then 29 years later, I got to do a movie with him, Small Time Crooks. So it was literally a dream come true. And I remember when I was, a kid, I'd be 12, my dad would yell at me. I was obsessed with Willie Mays. Like, and he goes, "There's more to life than Willie Mays." And I was 12, and I remember looking at him thinking, "No, there isn't." Willie Mays. It was like people, when they looked at Michael Jordan, he was that, or whoever, or LeBron James, they're looking at, he was Willie Mays. I go, "No, he's it." And then when I wanted to be a comedian, I was like 19 minutes. He goes, "Who do you think you are, Woody Allen?" The same shit. So, sorry. So anyway, now I'm on the set, and first time he goes, "Well, just try stuff," and he goes, "Just, you can say anything you want as long as it's real." And I go, "Why would I change your dialogue?" But the first day, I didn't have any lines. It was just a action scene. So the next day, and I kept saying to his producer, I go, "I want to talk to him. I have a question." He goes, "He doesn't like questions." I go, "Yeah, but it's about the movie. Then he's making the movie." I go, "Yeah, but it's a question about the movie he's making. I'm in it." So I saw him on the set the first day. I said, "I have to ask you a question." And I said, "All right." I go, "Well, all the guys that in the scene, it was him and Michael Rappaport and Tony Darrow. I go, you're all from New York, and you have thick New York accents. I'm from Los Angeles. So I was thinking of doing a character, He goes, "Yeah, as long as it's real." Okay, because my nightmare was, I'd hear like he would do a movie and 2 weeks in, he'd fire the person. And my nightmare, of course, would be fired by my idol. I mean, like, it would crush me, and I did not want to be fired. And I wanted to know, how does he want me to play the character? So the next day we're on the set, and I decided to imitate this guy named Cha-Cha, who was on the Wise Guys thing, who I'd met. This guy was from New York. He was Tony Danza's boxing manager. He owned a restaurant. And he talked like this. "How you doing?" Oops. Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Okay, we can have another guest call in.
No, it's a.
Is it Woody Allen? That would be hilarious.
No. Darn it. Sorry, on my computer. No, it's the wrong. No, it's going to call it. It might do it again. It's the wrong number. So I'm on the set. So I started talk like Cha-Cha. He just talk like this. He goes, "My knee blown up. I got an inflammation." And I'm not exaggerating. That's how he talked. "How you doing? I asked this girl, 'Why wouldn't you marry me, you fat,'" and he, cussing. He goes, "Why don't you gain 400 pounds?" And he goes, "Something like this." So I'm doing that. And Woody Allen goes, "Stop." And then he pulls me over. He goes, "Listen, I think it's better if you just do yourself, because those guys like us, we're already funny. And I tell people it's going to be you and me. It'll be fantastic." So he goes, "Sure." He goes, "Yeah, you don't have to do that." He goes, "Guys like us, we're already funny, naturally." I go, "Okay." So I went back to where you're supposed to stand, called your mark, and I started crying. And I'm like, tears are like this. And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." And I had to hold it back because he said guys like us. Now, remember, I'm 19 or 20, and my dad goes, he's screaming at me, who do you think you are, Woody Allen? Now, 29 years later, I'm on the set with Woody Allen. I was 13. I said, take the money and run. And said, I want to be a comedian like Woody Allen. My dad goes, who do you think you are, Woody Allen? I'm 20. And now I'm 42. I'm on the set. And Woody Allen is saying, you know, guys like us are funny. Guys like us. And I was like, and I had to stop. I almost lost it. And I called Dana Carvey that night. He said, he was like, I go, Dana, I told him the story. And he said, guys like us. And Dana started screaming, guys like us, guys like us. I go, yes, you get it, guys like us. Because Dana loved Woody Allen. We all did. You know, I'm sure Kevin Pollak would go, oh, he does a Woody Allen imitation. You know, huge influence, Woody Allen, on guys our age. And we were just screaming. And I remember after the movie, I go, well, now what? Should I just quit? Like, goal achieved. You know what I mean?
We're glad you didn't. I want to thank you so much for your time and your stories. These are great, and I know my listeners will love it. And it was so. I hope
I didn't just ramble. I'm sorry, I go on tangents.
It's okay. Tangents are a part of the religion of human nature, which is the podcast. It came all the way full circle with this story because part of the influence is making it. Because if you're just influenced and don't do anything with it, then how much of an influence can it really be? So. You cannot. Well, I want to thank you for your time and
thank you. And if I want to give advice to people, I was giving these kids like 20. They were just asking me about life, and the thing that turned it around for me, my career, which would for anybody, is I heard a preacher on the radio, but I didn't care. But I was just happened to listen to the radio. I was 26. I had no money. I had one job. For 2 weeks after college, that was it. As acting, I was a messenger. And the good thing is, after college, my dad was a very successful doctor, but he goes, after college, you're on your own. And I thanked him later because it forced me to make something of myself because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And because I had these crap jobs, and I heard this guy say, a preacher, he said, Southern, he goes, you know, people say they want to be rich and famous. He goes, but ask yourself, are you willing to do what you have to do to get what you want? Are you willing to do what you have to do to get what you want? Because most people aren't. They say they want it, but they won't do it. So I remember thinking, all right, am I willing to do what I have to do to get what I want? And it was like looking down a big black tunnel with no light at the end. And I just go, I just can't do it anymore. I've been doing something like 15 plays. It's like 11 years later, no work, nothing. And I just went, all right, And you'd see people over time, they drop out because there's nothing. They go, I can't do it anymore. I'm not getting anything back. I'm trying and trying. So I just said, I'm done. And that night I quit. And then I woke up in the morning and I slammed my fist on my pillow and I go, but I don't want to quit. And I thought, well, then you better get your ass in gear. You better do everything you have to do. And then I just like really focused. And then 3 years later, I started getting breaks and working. But it all comes down to that. Are you, legally, not screwing people over, being a good person, but are you willing to do what you have to do to get what you want? And then you make a plan and then you do it. I mean, that's it. That's 101. He goes, that's it. I go, yeah.
I appreciate it.
The time it takes you to learn how to do something. And if you are, you can do anything.
I love it. Well, thank you, sir. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Shabbat shalom.